Grand Rising, Grand Rising, Grand Rising, everyone. I hope everyone is having a great Tuesday so far. Alrighty, wait, where's my? Here we go. I got my headphones. Alrighty, let's see. Hey, Dolores, hello there. Hey, Lolita, hello, hello. Hey, Teresa, hello, hello, everyone. Hey, hey, hey. Gotta be able to hear myself. Make sure my audio is good. Alrighty, there we go. Alrighty, another day. No Diddy today, of course. I will be doing a show on Diddy later on this week, though, because it looks like that the witness stand is getting a little iffy, guys. I don't know if you guys have been watching it still, outside of my coverage, but the last witness, she's a little questionable. So I feel like we definitely have to do a Diddy show, possibly Thursday. And that's when I think I'm gonna do it. I think. Hey Donisha, hello there. Hey Robin, hello there. Alrighty, guys, let's get into this next case. Okay. Now this case is it's a little crazy. And I can honestly say that I really can't I can blame the mother in this situation, but I understand domestic violence. Okay. And I feel like that early on she tried to do something, but I think that who dropped the ball was law enforcement. Okay. That's honestly what I think in this case, but let's get into the details. Hey, Yolanda. Hello there. How are you? Hello, hello, hello. Alrighty. So this is the case of Oakley Snow. She was a 1 year old. Okay. And the defendants in this case is her stepfather, Roan Waters, and her mother, Madison Marshall. Okay. And at the time, well, for most of her life, um, Oakley was living with her biological father. But her mother and the stepfather pulled a stunt, and then that's when everything kind of went left. This happened out there in Oklahoma. It was more so of a transit state type of thing because it started in Oklahoma, then went to Indianapolis, and then it went to somewhere in Indiana. That's where it all ended. And that's how this case is closing out. Has closed out. I'm having a great day so far, for sure, for sure. A great start to the week. My homework, I'm almost mostly through it. And then I can start doing some other things that I have to do. So Oakley Snow was 22 months old. Okay. She was a toddler out there in Oklahoma. And she had lived with her biological father. His name was Zachary Snow. And he had partial custody of her at the time. Now, when it comes to her mother, Madison Marshall, was in a volatile relationship with her then boyfriend, Roan Waters, who was 27 at the time. So both Marshalls and Waters, they had a history of domestic violence, instability, and as well as some substance abuse issues that were there as well. Hey, the real books, hello there. Now, this goes all the way back to October of 2022. These two have just now been sentenced. Okay. So the October of 2022 allegation states that Marshall had reported to the county sheriff's department that Waters had hit Oakley. Okay. Now, this is the mother. She's making her first initial report. Okay. To say that her boyfriend had hit Oakley in the mouth and slapped her as well across the face. Now, the deputies, they did respond to her call, and they did photograph the injuries that were on Oakley at the time. So she had a cut on her lip, and Marshall had a swollen and bruised eye as well as a cheek because he hit both of them. Okay. Now, despite this evidence, Waters had refused to cooperate with the authorities when they were at the house. He actually cussed the deputies out and told them that they needed to leave during the welfare check. He slammed the door in their faces, blasted some music, and then tried to disrupt their efforts in investigating what was going on and became very much aggressive on the property. Hey, Elizabeth. Hey, Lysandra, hello there. How are you? So once this was all done, now here's where I'm a little bit confused of is because do you guys know that they just left? He slammed the door. They have already taken pictures of him being abusive to both of them, the child and the mother. They left the residence and then leaves to go write a warrant which was filed on November the 7th. Okay. The initial call was made earlier before that. Okay. Now, they had put the warrant out for child abuse and domestic violence, assault, and battery in the presence of a minor. However, the warrant was never served before Oaklee was taken. Okay. They never, so there were early on signs that were already there that not only law enforcement, they could have stepped in to assist in the early stages, because this is not one of those situations where the mother, she's getting abused and she doesn't make any phone calls or she doesn't report. This is a mother that actually reported something. It's the law enforcement that dropped the ball, which is normal. What a lot of people don't understand is that when it comes to domestic violence, there are statistics that do show that law enforcement officers either don't respond the way that they should, or they fail to report and document what occurred. That is something that is well known. Basically, their judgment is a little off when it comes to domestic violence, as if domestic violence isn't dangerous within itself. And it starts off within the smallest of stages. Now, what happened was, because during this time of this initial domestic violence abuse, the biological father and the mother is trading Oaklee off, but Oaklee is primarily with her dad. Okay. So Madison Marshall and Roan, they had took Oaklee and Oaklee's 7-month-old brother from the father's house in Oklahoma without permission. So Zachary Snow had then reported the children missing to the county sheriff's office. So he told the investigators that Marshall and Waters were likely headed to Indiana. And that is where Waters' family was. Now, the couple had arrived in Indianapolis and they stayed at a home that's connected to Waters' relatives at the 300 block of Albany Street. Now, during this period, all right, and this search for the children, both of the children were exposed to some dangerous conditions. They were living in what many people call either a trap house or a drug house. And authorities had later called this to be a very dangerous area for the child, of course. So moving on to February the 9th of 2023, according to Marshall, in her confession, that is where the fatal abuse had took place. Where Marshall says that she was in the kitchen when she had heard Waters yelling repeatedly at Oaklee in the living room while she was in the kitchen. So he was then reporting and he was demanding that the toddler bounce on a rubber ball, because he was known to put the toddler and the baby into these very strenuous exercises and punishments, along with the beatings in which he gave them as well. So after she heard the fifth scream, Marshall had then checked and saw that Oaklee was sitting on the ball, but she was really weak at the time. And her boyfriend was standing over top of her. So minutes later, Waters had then screamed in a panic. Marshall had ran back to find that Waters was holding Oaklee's limp body, insisting, "I didn't do anything, and it wasn't my fault," is what he told her. Yeah, it was very dangerous where they were. Very, very dangerous. Now, give me 1 second, guys. Trying to get something here. Okay. Look at his tattoos on his face. Yeah. But I honestly feel like that this girl was in a really bad domestic violence relationship. And I really wish that the authorities would have done their job before we got to this point. They could have saved this child and the mother. Now, here's where the mother's hand isn't clean, though, because this is where she failed at. So Waters had allegedly refused to let Marshall call 911. And instead, he stripped Oaklee of her clothes, wrapped her in a blanket, and Marshall checked and found that Oaklee was cool to touch Her lips were blue. Her blood mixed with spit gargled from her mouth. Her eyes were closed, and she was unresponsive and not breathing. So Waters had then drove Marshall and Oakley's body to an abandoned house that was out there in Indiana. So he had climbed through a window with the body and returned alone. So basically, the mother assisted him in hiding her daughter's body. So on April the 21st of 2023, after Waters was arrested on unrelated charges, Marshall then goes to the authorities and she says, "Listen, I want to help." Because she's finally feeling safe, I think, because he's locked up and he's away. She couldn't talk to him, of course, because he's controlling everything. Now, keep in mind that even while doing this, they had left the other toddler alone somewhere else. Okay. Now, she then began to talk to the authorities. Now, there were some witnesses that did report seeing that Oakley was unconscious and wrapped in a blanket and was being carried out of the Indianapolis house sometime in February of that year. The last time that anyone had saw her alive was prior to that. So what the mother decided to do was in her, efforts to assist now that he's locked up and he's in jail. In April of 2023, she then had led the investigators to where her child's body was. So he put this child, guys, in a dresser. Oakley was wrapped up in a blanket in a dresser drawer. Her body was found to be, of course, decomposed. Her left leg was visibly broken at the knees, and they were bent back to her chest. So the coroner did confirm the remains via DNA on May the 12th of 2023 and ruled the death to be a homicide by unspecified means. Now, when it comes to their charges, of course, Rome was arrested in March of 2023 in a hotel, and he was held there due to the warrant. And then the other charges came after. He was charged with the murder, neglect, neglect of a dependent, resulting in death, as well as battery resulting in injury to a person younger than 14 years old, and then domestic violence, as well as concealing a death. He did take a plea deal, though. Now, when it comes to the mother, she was charged with neglect, child endangerment, abandonment of her son, as well as concealing a death. She also took a plea deal. One second. I'm trying to do something, guys.
Police say Oakley's mother, Madison Marshall, and her boyfriend, Waters, kidnapped the toddler as well as her brother from Oklahoma. Investigators found Oakley dead inside a dresser in Morgan County in 2023. Fox 59 obtained a copy of Waters' plea deal today, and with the remaining three charges, he also agreed to a sentence of 45 years in prison. A separate document includes some of the newly filed evidence that could have been shown at trial. Taken from Marshall's interviews that details a pattern of abuse against her and against Oakley. Waters is set to be sentenced on June 13th.
Marshall is due to learn her sentence the same day. She did take a plea deal last month. She agreed to testify against Waters in his trial, which, as you know, heard is now canceled. In exchange, the state dropped most of her charges, and she agreed to a 25-year prison sentence.
So she got 25 and he received 45. And hers came through the plea deal, of course. The child didn't look healthy. She didn't look healthy at all. She did not look healthy or happy at all. Yeah. And they did take the murder charges off of the mother in exchange for her testimony against him. But of course, because of the deal, there was nothing that came out of that besides her getting the deal. And then they also are still looking at other, charges too, due to the domestic violence that the mother had endured and some other evidence that came out in the midst. So there could be more time added on, or they may feel as though that is enough. Okay. Now, throughout the investigation, Marshall had told law enforcement that Waters had choked Oaklee for not eating fast enough, beat her for urinating in a diaper, and hit her for holding the fork wrong. So he would yell, demand adult like behavior at her, and enforce military style discipline, as well as showed zero empathy or concern when she was unresponsive. Now, this is why I am one that feels as though that when it comes to domestic violence, I think that a lot of I think a lot of law enforcement officers don't really understand the gravity of it. I also don't think that they understand the early signs of it either. Because if they did, when she called and said that this man hit her and her daughter, and he was already volatile, closing the door in their faces, screaming at them and turning the music up, that showed aggression. He could have done something at that moment because she called the police alone. Okay? And they decided, okay, we're going to just leave. We're going to leave, and then we're just going to write a warrant. He could have killed her right then and there. Because as we know, when it comes to people who are, abusers, you calling the police alone could have caused a victim to be abused. So why wouldn't you take the extra step to ensure that this man cannot act on his behaviors after you leave? As if you guys did not take pictures of a child with bruises from a grown man that is not her biological father. You know what I mean? Thank you, Lolita. Yes, if you like this video, please like this video. Law enforcement needs to be better educated on domestic disputes. They always wait too late, and that's true. And that's also why there should be some form of policy in place when it comes to domestic violence. I've always said that one thing that needs to be for sure to happen, there needs to be a mandatory protective order. The moment that you call for domestic violence, bruises are found, an arrest must be made, and a protective order must occur without a shadow of a doubt, and it should not be temporary. A lot of times these judges, they give out temporary protective orders, sometimes 30 days. 30 days isn't enough to protect a person from a violent person. And so there should be a mandatory protective order, mandatory arrest of the aggressor. There also should be some form of accountability step that must occur, i.e., the victim must speak to a domestic violence counselor that allows the judge and everyone else to connect the dots on the dangers, but also identify any warnings that are there at that moment from the victim's side of things. The abuser must be held for a certain amount of time. Once they are released, they must then go through some form of therapy to identify the cause of their abuse, whether it be mental health, whether it be anger management. Those type of things need to happen. But I'm going to tell you what goes on, guys. There is no stages of accountability when it comes to domestic violence. I'm going to give you an example. If a woman calls the authorities and say that, she's being abused, they may arrest the person that abused her, right? And that person may be held for a little bit. But there's no accountability of the victim's end after that. There's no accountability to ensure that the abuser does not continue on with stalking behavior or continue on to be a back around the victim or continue to harass the victim. There is no accountability there. If you want to be honest, I think we pay enough tax dollars that each department should have some form of division that manages domestic violence and domestic violence alone. And this division could include therapists, domestic violence counselors, okay, and professionals that understand the field. These professionals that's in the field can then be sure to carry on the accountability steps to the courtroom. Why? Because this division have spoken to the victim and this division have spoken to the suspect. They will then be able to assist the prosecution with any recommendations that will fit for the victim and the abuser, whether it be therapy, whether it be time, whether it be psychological evaluations and assistance, whether it be any of those things. But also there needs to be some form of measure to be put in place, i.e., because there is this gray line in there where a person can be abused, right? And the victim will end up back with the accused. I mean, with the accused. It can be through fear. That can be one, or it can be through by way of domestic violence things, like someone that is abusive have a fine way of getting themselves back around the victim and making the victim feel as though that it's right. So there needs to be something there to protect that gray area, to ensure that they're not back around each other, i.e., if there is another domestic violence call and there was a prior call already made and there was a prior arrest already made and this defendant is found back into this household or around this victim, there will be a mandatory sentence or something like that in place to fix that gray area that's there. Because there needs to be some form of accountability. Because not only does the adults get abused, but children get abused as well. And just like in this situation here, this woman only felt safe to talk to the authorities when he was arrested. And we cannot take that away from her. We can't take that away from her. That she, the moment he got arrested, okay, I want to go help for they can know what really happened with my daughter. That lets us know that she was afraid of this man. She was afraid of going to the authorities while he was out and about in the streets. And sometimes victims need to be separated from the offender in order for them to feel free to either talk. Some victims, let's say, a police officer goes to the home and like this situation, they don't arrest the offender. The victim is not likely to talk to you. So that's why there needs to be some form of mandatory stay, whether it be for 48 hours or a 72-hour hold, to give this accountability team or this division to speak to the victim to see exactly what this victim needs. Thank you, Evangelist. Thank you so very much. What does this victim need? Does this victim need to be in a domestic violence shelter? We know that this victim needs counseling. What does the children need? Have the children ever been abused by this person? It gives this division time to get those questions answered. So when this offender goes to the courtroom, okay, sir, this is what we have. We have the victim that says that her child was abused by this person. We have the victim that states that this offender is known to use drugs, illicit drugs, alcohol. Okay, that lets the judge know, okay, this person needs some form of drug abuse counseling, Alcohol Anonymous or something like that. This person is known to have anger issues. Okay, this person needs anger management classes or something like that. That's what it does. But it's not done in a way to ensure that accountability measures happen. Yes, we have the resources. Yes, we know that there's therapies out there for victims. Yes, we know that there's shelters out there for domestic violence victims, but there is no accountability measures in there's none of that is happening, guys. There's none, or we would not be here. We would not be here, and Oaklee would still be alive. Oaklee will still be alive. Improving the laws is necessary. It is necessary. It needs an update. Everything needs an update. Domestic violence is not what it was in the 1970s and 80s. Domestic violence is a little bit more different now because we're in a new day and a new time. New day, new time, new issues, new triggers, new traits. So that division needs to happen. I really think that that needs to occur. Every police department, because typical police officers, they really don't understand the gravities of domestic violence, y'all. They just don't. Because if they did, they would never left. Because I don't know how they were able to look and see that a 1-year-old had bruises on her face from a grown adult and didn't take nobody into custody in the first place. That I don't understand. That will go back to that division that I was talking about. Because when the law enforcement will go out there to the house for a domestic violence call, guess who will be with them? Someone from the division. Someone from the division to ensure that he goes to jail and accountability occurs. And the victim is then taken in for a sit down with the division to alert them of everything that is going on while this person is being in custody. And depending on the threats that were provided, i.e., death threats to the victim, the level of abuse, the longer the stay for the offender. What this does is save lives, not just adult lives, but children as well. Children as well. It's worse, but yes, it's worse, but they care less. Like it's way worse now. In the pandemic alone, the pandemic actually, domestic violence spiked, but I'm gonna tell y'all what happened. Domestic violence spiked, but the response, it decreased. Does that even make any sense? And it was because the offenders were in the home with the victims 24/7. But authorities were not responding the way that they should have. If nobody wasn't working during the pandemic, the police definitely were. That's for sure. And those statistics has continued to be the same even after the pandemic. Makes zero sense. So that lets us know that the authorities, police department, they truly have a hard time deciding what's a victim of domestic violence and what's an offender of domestic violence. What's the early on signs of domestic violence and how to deter domestic violence. They don't really understand that. They really don't. You would think they do, but they don't at all. So, as of right now, these two, their final sentencing is supposed to be happening. They have a recommendation for both. His is 45, hers is 20 or something like that. And then the final is supposed to be on June the 13th on what they're actually going to get. But they already have their recommendations out there. And it's unfortunate that, I kind of feel bad for the mother just a little bit, tiny bit. And it's because at the end of the day, she was a victim of domestic violence. And her response lets us see that. Because she did report. A lot of times, when we cover these cases, the woman don't report that her child is being abused. She never says nothing. She goes with it and becomes a part of it. But in this situation, this woman made a call that did not get the proper answer. In this situation, when she seen he was arrested, she instantly went to go help the authorities. That lets us know that there was some form of fear factor in place. You know, they just don't give the proper attention to it. Yeah. But there's so many people that is affected by domestic violence. It's so many people, guys. So many. And there's another issue where you have some people that don't even view certain things as domestic violence. Some law enforcement officers does not take certain, stages of domestic violence as true abuse, i.e., verbal, emotional. Some officers, unless you hit somebody, they don't view that as domestic violence. So nobody will be arrested. Some officers, if they don't see bruises, nobody will get arrested. It's all about their discretion, and some of them, their discretion is truly off. It's badly off, you know. Many of law enforcement officials are abusers themselves. That's why. That is the thing too. A lot, yeah. I've heard that a lot of them, and it's because of the stressors of their job. Yeah. I actually did a paper on that. Yeah. A lot of them. A lot of them suffer from mental health too, that it goes unanswered. And it's because if they do report it, it can then cause them to either lose their job or, if they report their mental health in any type of way. So some of them suffer in silence. And so who gets the bulk of it is people at home, wives, children. Some of them turn to alcohol and things of that nature. So yeah, that's definitely a thing. It's definitely a thing. Many are embarrassed, yeah, to know that their job is taking over them the way that it is them, mentally. The statistics of officers unaliving themselves is going up. That's a rise right now too because of the stressors of their job. And it's a job that has a lot of demand. A lot of demand, a lot of public scrutiny comes with it. One wrong move and you're done. One wrong move and you're finished. And so it's a lot on their shoulders. I cannot take that from them. But I would think that if you really like what you do, you would get the education that you need in order to do it and ensure that you handle things unbiasedly and that you use the proper discretion when it comes to your judgment when you walk into the homes or the communities of the people that you serve. It shouldn't be just a badge. Being a police officer isn't just a badge. It's not just a badge. It's not just something that you can be proudly say that you have. Um, it's tough to leave the job at the door. It's just one of those jobs, guys, that it's a tough job that somebody got to do, but it's a hard job to let go. I'm gonna give you an example. Y'all know I'm a military spouse. That's the closest thing that I can give you an example to because that's another job that is high in stress, high in demand, high in scrutiny, high in expectation. But do you know how many soldiers cry when it's time to leave and retire? You know how many soldiers they know that the job is really wearing them thin, but they cannot leave their brothers behind? It's one of those type of jobs, guys, that it's great to have, you know, but it's sad to see it go. And being a police officer works just like that, just like the military. It's the same thing. They must care about all citizens. That's true. Very much. My brother was like that when he retired from the military. My husband was like that, and I didn't even understand it. I'm like, he was really sad, because he felt like that he was leaving his battle buddies behind. And it was all, and I'm like, you should be happy to retire. He's like, I'm not happy. This is not happy. This is not a happy thing because they feel like that there's still work to do. There's still people to serve. There's still their co-workers and friends that are out there working. And so when they have to drop the badge or drop the uniforms, it no longer feels the same. It just feel like that they are in a world that they don't understand because that job is truly all they know, you know? So they have to readjust to what the regular world outside of the uniform and badge, you know? I didn't understand it. When he first retired, I did not. I'm like, "What's wrong?" Like, he's like, it's just not easy." I said, "I thought you were happy." He's like, I'm trying to be. I'm trying to be, but it's still work out there, you know?" So I definitely get it. Doctors, medical staff, they're the same way. Yeah. People who are in positions of serving, it's hard for them, for sure. Yeah, because they know that the job isn't done. They know that the task isn't complete at all, you know? And it's like, if I'm not there, who's gonna do it? They know that there's people to do it, but they ain't there with them. It's a mind thing, you know? It's a mind thing. Alrighty, guys. Now tomorrow we're gonna be getting into the whole Bitcoin situation. There was a tech or digital coin tech person. They have not given us the identity of the victim, who was lured to New York, tortured, hung over a balcony, burned because he or she wouldn't give them the password to their Bitcoin account. And so there have been 2 people arrested so far for this. It's getting a little crazy. So we're going to be going over that tomorrow. Make sure that you're here. The show has already been posted, so make sure that you click your notification bells. All right. And I will see you guys tomorrow at 10 a.m. And if you are new here, please make sure that you do subscribe. And thank you for watching True Crime with Savage Royalty.